All right, it is 5:32. We'll call the Finance and Budget Committee meeting to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
States of America.
Stands one nation, under God,
Which
indivisible,
stands
with liberty and justice for all.
indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
I had my hat on. Oops, I feel so bad now.
That's all right.
All right. So do we don't need roll call or anything, do we?
No, we don't need to do that. So
Okay.
you can just kind of like.
Next, the first item on the agenda is business office updates. And Angela, if you want to jump in on your items here.
Yes. So just wanted to just update you on several things with the business office. We're, there's really no downtime over the course of the year. Right now, we're working to do main budget work for the next school year. I mean, a lot of the preliminary work is done. We're sending information out to budget holders, and I guess some of that I'll get to a little bit more in detail later on. But just we have a new accountant on staff, which has been real nice to have Rob Weinhold join our staff. And we had a new accounts payable in fall. She's, kind of working her way through her first year in the district, and both doing a very, very nice job. Some of the things that we continue to work on in our department is currently we have 4 main people full-time working. When I arrived in the district about a year and a half ago, there was a transition right around that time, and there used to be 2 main people working through payroll needs, and so what's now called the benefit coordinator. We kind of just did some shifting around the first of the year, and the payroll responsibilities from that benefits coordinator position that moved down to HR came back to the business office. So even before that change, we had many discussions about sort of the workload of the business office staff. There many years ago, I'd say probably close to 10 or 11 years ago, maybe a little less than that, there used to be another part-time person that worked in the business office and did like title and grant budgeting work for our office. So I just wanted to make you guys aware that we're working through and trying to figure out how we can best balance the needs and just manage the workload and the capacity that we have in our department. It's especially with during the pandemic, but even outside of that, we have 1 staff member that does our accounts payable. She does our title budgeting, and she does open enrollment. And those are, like everyone's kind of maxed out in the office with their load and what they're doing. And that job specifically has a tremendous amount on it. And we're just trying to find ways to best balance that, especially as we move towards Skyward, a new financial system that we're moving towards implementing. So I just wanted to share that with you. I mean, everyone's working hard and doing a great job. It's with COVID funds and just many things overall, it's just there's been a lot going on, and we're doing the best we can, but we're just trying to look and see if there are ways if, potentially adding a position would be an option in order to best balance that.
So with that said, is there a concern with not being able to, because I get it, you have the ESSER funds that you didn't have previously. Mm-hmm. You have the implementation of Skyward. Mm-hmm. And then, also, what's on the horizon coming for our budget next year, with a possible shortfall. Yes. Is there a potential that would not, or that there, anything could be falling through the cracks that you're seeing or anything like that? Everything's getting.
Yeah, it's we're deadline to deadline. We work as hard as we can through everything. I think the big thing is, everyone's been working full kilter. It's just the business office specifically, like the COVID funds are one thing and that will go away, you know what I mean, over time, and that's gonna be a period of time, and 2 years from now, that work will not be there, but that's kind of mixed in with other similar grant work. We've had also some changes with what's called our Fund 21, and that was we were finishing the implementation of that through what's called GASB 84 last year, and before GASB 84, or before we had to do that implementation, all of the schools had what's called their own checking accounts for student activities. So let's say an elementary school would take the kids to an apple orchard and there would be a fee of $2 per student. They could just write the check out from that checkbook and they could send it to the apple orchard and everything would be all set to go. And those funds were monitored and reconciled individually by each school. But we were required by the state, districts all over the state had to bring them onto the district ledger. So they have to go through the regular purchasing policies and management through the district, and that is, quite a bit of extra work over the course of the year. So just increases the volume of purchasing, increases, everything overall. So yeah, we're just looking at some options. I was talking to some other, talking to other business managers about how their roles are split up in of like-sized districts, because every district is organized a little differently. So the plan right now is to continue to look at options and then put together a potential job description to meet what the needs would be to kind of fill that gap and help us, cover the work overall for the business office better. Like right now, we don't have someone, like when the payroll was backed up by the person that did the benefits coordinator position, we had someone that could step in and do payroll if our payroll person was sick.
Yeah.
But now we don't have anyone that is, cross-trained for payroll because those responsibilities came back down to the business office. So, and it's not easy to just do payroll. You can't just step in and it's very intricate and very important. You don't want to, our teacher payroll over $1 million. You want to make sure that that's all well organized. So, everyone's working hard and doing a great job. We're just, we are maxed out at the same time though. So.
How do you measure that?
Huh?
How do you measure that? Is that just like when you say you're maxed out, like you just?
Yeah. So. But yeah, I guess some of the key indicators that I would say that it's a great question. So our accounts payable person, for example, she runs checks every week and she has like a certain amount of work and volume that has to go and just organizing and confirming that things are paid and all that kind of stuff and managing that. There's a lot of, along with accounts payable, you're also always supposed to be tracking and monitoring the vendor management, making sure that people are submitting their certificates of insurance if they need to, if they provide services and just other things for the district and just general maintenance in our system. And, that sometimes along with the other work, we have updating and cleanup and stuff in our database that we just kind of have to let go because we have to make sure that we keep maintaining the work of open enrollment and of our title budgeting. So the title work of her role, for example, she has to work with private schools and public schools, coordinating purchases, making sure the budget's entered to in WISE grants, and then making sure like our system matches that and getting all of that coordinated. Open enrollment is a special challenge because you have certain deadlines that you have to meet with open enrollment. When we have requests that come in, we have a certain window, I believe it's 1 week, where we have to get back to them and she's got to coordinate with different staff in the district. So with the sheer volume and then the required turnaround are like our key indicators that make it very overwhelming at times. So
just so I understand better,
Yeah.
It sounds like we're at a point now where we're having a hard time keeping up and some work is getting pushed that needs to get caught up on. And I guess from my seat, I'm just curious, is that something that you anticipate is gonna, I don't know how, if you guys are busy throughout the year pretty steadily, or if it's, if there's periods of time where you can get caught up in other areas, like, do we really need like another body at this point? I guess I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, I know what you're
through that.
saying. With the open enrollment, especially, there are small lulls in the year, but it is pretty steady throughout the course of the entire year. And then with title, there is sometimes with them, like when title will slow down, for example, maybe during the summer months, the end of year with accounts payable picks up, and then just closing out and liquidating purchase orders to make sure that we, know where our ending balances are for the year. That's very, very time consuming. And so that will be like a tremendous, she'll really she's like racing to get through open enrollment stuff to be organized, because we have to notify families by June 10th. And then we have to focus on year end. So it's kind of one thing after the next. So open enrollment historically, when, I want to say like 10, 15 years ago, used to be like a much smaller role. And so it was in that job because the accounts payable wasn't believed to be a full-time job in itself. And the title work, if it helps to think in measure, as a measure, was a half-time position. And so they were combined into one position along with the open enrollment, and the open enrollment specifically has just gotten to be a lot over the years. So even if our numbers go down slightly, the paperwork and the process when parents request and what we have to collect and communicate across buildings is quite extensive. So yeah, we're just continuing to look at, we've looked at different options. There's just not one person in our business office that I can say, okay, you have the time to be the backup for payroll, or you have all this time in your schedule to do this. We're all kind of racing against the clock. So, we're getting stuff done, but it's just kind of trying to, it's just the balance of it is just a little overwhelming at times. So.
So the game plan moving forward, you're going to be presenting us with some options for solutions, is what you're
Correct.
hoping for, and then you're going to present that in the next meeting.
Yeah, and I continue to talk to Mark. We have a couple of needs, across different departments in the district, and I think we're just, as a director team, are putting together some options to really balance that into a workable solution. So,
Have you, besides hiring a new person, which it sounds like is one of the options, have you considered any other options so far, or?
Yeah, I mean, there are some things too with we do some work with our Manitowoc Public School District Foundation, and we have worked to talk with them. We've taken on the assets of the Manitowoc Public School District Foundation. Well, they used to be held under the district, and now they're held under the foundation, and they're looking to grow. And we, through our business office work, process the student loan and the scholarship programs. So my secretary, Joyce Stuckman, she works very hard on that. And we've had to, we've had the kind of to bear the weight of maintaining those programs, and we're trying to get some of that work shifted over to the foundation. It's just tricky because it's very specialized work with those programs. We're trying to streamline and get some of, they've hired like a fundraiser, someone who's going to be helping with more of that, and they'll offer some assistance for those programs. But there are, like with Joyce, who does that loan program and is my secretary, she also is our purchaser in the district. And another thing we've had to kind of balance is the fact when our insurance came in and looked at where we have all the purchasing taking place, we have someone just who was like both purchasing and receiving. So that's, and just kind of the line of segregation of duties, wanted us to have it just be, to have that out of that role. So, just to protect things overall. So, there weren't any concerns here, but just when they study districts and talk about like liability, you don't want someone who's placing orders and also receiving, because then there could be additional risk for the district from that standpoint. So one thing we were trying to do was to move some of the work off of Joyce's plate with the loan and scholarship program so that she could take on more of the purchasing requirements for the central warehouse. So it's a lot of moving pieces, so.
Is it possible to have the foundation as a separate entity hire their own person to do that?
They did hire someone recently to do some of the work, and then we've also been talking with them to work and settle on some like a management fee. So that is one thing that would also help potentially offset some of the costs of an extra employee to where we haven't had that in the past. So
How would it be though if we said to the foundation, take all that over and just do it and take that off our plate?
I think that, and the work overall for that is not, with the loan program at times, since we've had to move the management of it recently, has been taking a lot of work. Overall, as a whole, it's not grossly time consuming. It has been more in the last couple of months because we had to move everything from Associated Bank over to Lakeshore Community Foundation.
Right.
To your point though, yes, we were trying to move in that direction, but then some of the person who is hired as an independent contractor, so they're not truly an employee of that foundation. So there are some kind of things that we have to be careful with that because you still want to keep your signers as part of your organization. So Mark and I serve as ex officio members for the foundation. So like when I do work for the foundation in the scope of my day, it's not extensive over the course of a week.
Okay.
So I guess there's no like magic silver bullet that's gonna like really cure it. It's just we're trying to manage a lot and trying to be more efficient. The transition to Skyward, which I'll update you guys on in a little bit, is gonna help to a degree, but still with some of the critical functions like payroll. You need to have people to, the thought is to get someone maybe that could serve in that backup role. And then also with that accounts payable, title, and open enrollment job, that it just has a lot in it, just to lighten the load of that a little bit. So
what has Superintendent Holtzman, obviously you brought this situation to him and concern. What was his response to the request? I mean, did he offer up any other solutions other than hiring another person?
We discussed it, in administration meetings on several occasions, and really we just continue to look at options, and then they'll kind of put it on the back burner for a little bit, and then come back and look at different options. So there are a couple other pockets of support. Special education has had increased student population. They're really struggling to get through mandated paperwork, like business office, you have just a lot of filing deadlines. Our registration, in August, that's always slammed busy, so part of the solutions we're trying to figure out is a way that we could perhaps add another support that could help in more than one way and help alleviate the needs, in central office as a whole.
One thing I would like to see included in your presentation, and we are currently looking to do this in other committees, it sounds like, and even across the board, is an org chart.
Okay.
Can I get from your department a title and scope of work for each person in your department? Then that'd also help kind of allow us to see, what we have to work with, other options, etc. Does anybody else have anything to add to the discussion or questions?
Yeah, real quick, and I don't know if I missed something, but it sounded like there's a foundation that we're doing work for. Did I hear that right? Or help me understand why we would do that and the nature of that relationship, I guess.
Yeah, the foundation started in 2008 as a result of a donation from, I want to say West Foundation, but it might not be correct, for our International Baccalaureate program. And the foundation is something that the money was set aside, so it wasn't mixed with district funds, and it was to benefit students in Manitowoc Public School District. And that has stayed very small over the years. So I guess that, over the time, the scholarship and loan program was Manitowoc Public School District's program. It wasn't something that was the foundation, but in the last 2 years, it was signed over to the foundation. So, and the assets were transferred in 2019. So that's just kind of where, while it's work, for sure, it was always under the district, and then we transferred the assets, and then they're growing that foundation and kind of taking it to the next level. That's where we're looking at having them contribute to the management fee and gradually take more of that work off of our plates and streamline it.
Does that change at all with the IB program being phased out, or is that going to be around?
That was just one of the main original reasons that foundation was started. From there, the Ron Rubik Field, there was I want to say over $700,000 that was raised through the foundation for the district for that project. There are other, especially classes will have projects that they'll run through the foundation, and it's very typical for school districts to have a foundation to help kind of facilitate, especially with scholarships. Our loan program was very, very unique, but that it's a program, just a group to support the betterment of the school district and expand, opportunities for students. So yeah, it's definitely something that Mark and I have talked about, transitioning that over as much as we can to the foundation. And especially when we took on the payroll work, that was one of the reasons, or, some of that stuff came over. I expressed the need to start trying to phase more of that to the foundation. But there were other things like the, shifting of purchasing requirements or who was all entering requisitions district-wide and that kind of stuff that we started to look into other needs of the department as well. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Kathy?
Hey, Angela, since we did vote to kind of disband the IB program, are we obligated financially then to give over the remaining funds from that foundation?
No, the foundation itself is its own separate entity. It's not connected. The Manitowoc Public School District board doesn't have control over their funds. They have a separate governing board that manages that. Currently, they have for the scholarship and loan program, they have millions of dollars that are housed at the West Foundation right now that were privately donated funds, not collected of taxpayer money to run those programs. So
I just know that there were funds specifically earmarked for the IB program. And since we're not using them all because we are no longer going to have the IB program, is there an obligation then for the foundation to give those monies back to West?
Because they're under the possession of the foundation, I do not believe so. I don't believe that would be the case. I think that the need then would be for the foundation will be charged to find other ways, especially since there are other students that take advanced placement coursework. That there was some discussion about that being an option. The foundation will really be the governing body that will sort of consider what the next steps are with those funds.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah. So I just wanted to share that with the committee, just to let you guys know where we're at. So.
All right. Moving on, the other projects.
Yes, so copier and printer update. I just wanted to let you guys know that we started a couple step progress or project implementing regional printing and just updating equipment district-wide. In evaluating our contract when I came in the district, we were spending upwards of about $85,000 on our printers alone. So what we've moved to fair market value leasing, we've shopped around with different vendors. Sean Alfred had kind of started some of that work before he left the district. And we've really gone through and mapped out all of the buildings now, and central office and Lincoln have already been transitioned to regional printing. We use secure print release on cards now. And we've already ordered the equipment for the other buildings to sort of transfer and get that equipment kind of switched over for fall. So that's the second main phase of that. We're also moving to cloud faxing because just the analog, to create an analog signal, as I'm told from technology, is very costly, and we're not able to do that for very much longer. So that's a really big, big change as well, and that'll save the district money. And then also we're looking, I don't know if you guys all know, but we have a printing department in the district that does the main bulk printing. So we really encourage teachers to send printing down to the MSC, and there are two ladies that run that department. They run, copiers all day long. And so we're trying to find a way so that they can electronically send stuff down there, because right now they'll send like a piece of copies, say I need 30 of this, instead of, or some of them will send them by an attachment, but we'll have what's called our paper cut management system, where we can, through job ticketing, and the staff will be able to send print jobs down there electronically, and they'll be able to release them on machines and print them out, and it should, we're hoping it'll increase the amount that teachers will send downtown, or not downtown, True Central, the multi-service center for printing, excuse me.
So as far as the multi-service center, they're hand delivering pieces of paper for copy, or I'm just used to everything being.
It probably goes through the mail, the
Inter-office
mail. So they stick it in one of those things, and then it's picked up and moved around.
Why is that? That seems
That's just
totally archaic.
Yeah, it's just the system that they've used over the years, and this job ticketing will help us get to that next level. So
Okay.
It is a big adjustment. Teachers are very used to it. In some buildings, not every room has a printer, but several teachers have their own personal printer, and they just reach over. And so it's been trying to educate them and inform them that this is the reason why it was to save money, that we just trying to streamline cost and work more with our technology and reduce the use of paper. So the first, there were definitely learning curves and experiences through, putting new equipment here in central office and in Lincoln High School, but overall it's gone well. So, to date, we have saved, a substantial, where our budget is usually like $85,000. We'll, I'm not sure where it's going to land, but we'll save at least $10,000 to $20,000, I think, this year, and then more in the next years. So
That might be actually even where that shared folder, like a shared drive, would be severely beneficial. Just other than you wouldn't have that for next year or the year after, So, all right, great.
And all of our staff use Google Drives and stuff, but we're trying to work and push ahead with technology and streamline things as much as we can.
And I guess going with the other projects, Skyward, where are we at on that as far as the implementation? How far behind are we, or ahead, or what?
We're right on target at this point. We're kind of at the, we've had some work with Skyward so far. Our go live is January 2023. And we have a full calendar. I meet with the project manager from Skyward but once every other week, and that'll start being weekly pretty soon. And then end of May, on the 23rd of this month, we're going to start meeting it on a bi-weekly basis with the Human Resources and Business Office to just look at our timeline and our deliverables for just what we have to provide to Skyward. We've done one step where Andy Nickelbein, our network administrator, has pulled the information from Alio and transferred it to Skyward. Then they review it. We provide them screenshots. So we did that in the beginning of February. And then we have two more major deadlines, one in August and then one in October. And so after we provide the last information in October, we'll have some time where we'll have dual entry, and we'll be working kind of in both systems to make sure that everything is set up. We'll still be processing out of Alio, But then starting January 1, we will process out of Skyward. So it'll be huge, and it'll make, for budget transfers and stuff, we shuffle a lot of paper around right now, and just a lot of, purchasing used to be all with handwritten purchase orders. And it's gonna, be able to, and we moved it to like Google Sheets, but this will be all in the system. So it'll be very nice.
I have something about that unless anyone else.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, nice job finding some savings.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
We keep trying, there are some, we are very conservative with what we spend, as I view purchases and approve things daily. We try to very much be centered on like, why are we buying this? What is it for? And the purpose behind it. And sometimes there are easy ways that are like, okay, we can look at this and trim this down. And just we try to be creative and look for those opportunities as much as we can.
So Angela, I had asked Joyce about what our HR management software that we use is, and she did say that Skyward will be doing the contracts.
Yes, it will be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing I asked her was about electronic signing of the contracts. And she said that you and Joanne had looked at DocuSign.
Correct. Yes.
And is there a electronic signature component in Skyward?
For like our accounts payable and in Alio, like our signature block, that is something that we have to provide to them, and then they load it in the system. So it's not like a DocuSign per se. We can't always look at DocuSign. That's definitely an option. It'd be about, I want to say it was like between $4,000 and $5,000 for 1,000 envelopes. So if I send you, let's say I send 5,000 or 5 documents to Colin and 5 to you and 5 to you, it's 1, 2, 3 envelopes of documents. So there just seemed like, there was some interest, and there was definitely ways that we could use the program, but it seemed like we wanted to put it on hold until Skyward was in place to see if that would work. Whenever, in the short amount of time that I've been a business manager, one thing I've learned is you want to really always maximize your financial system, your financial and HR system. And if you can avoid getting additional add-ons, that's always, optimal. Like our frontline absence management for teachers, finding subs that will always be something that is a third-party add-on, because that's something that Skyward just chooses not to develop. So
does Skyward have a signature add-on, or you'd have to, does it talk with DocuWare?
Yeah, I think I'm not 100% if it would work with DocuSign. I could definitely look into it. But what teachers can do in Skyward is they can go in and acknowledge, and basically, I don't know if it's an actual signature or just type in their signature and acknowledge it instead of signing in and turn it into central office. Where like your signature would be loaded and already on a document, then, it would just appear like in a PDF when they would get that, and then they would sign it. So we were, in my past experience with Skyward, we were starting to explore that, but we never got to the point of going live with sending out contracts electronically.
Okay. And does Skyward only allow you, we have to pay for every person that's using it?
No, we have a district license for that.
Okay, so we have unlimited.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you pay by the size of your district. I should correct
Okay,
myself
okay.
on that. So like the amount of security you have on it. So.
Okay, so my question is, with signing of the contracts, is that something that if I had the username that I can go into Skyward and sign all those documents electronically?
I think typically your signature would be loaded in the system. Like if you'd want to view them, that would be the, typically in a district that's kind of like loaded in and just kind of in the document already. So I know what you're saying though, like if you'd want to review each one and make sure it was.
Right, so there's no document management part of Skyward.
Correct. I mean, there's an element of it, but how in depth it is, I'm guessing it might not be. It's probably not as developed as a DocuSign.
Okay,
You know, where like I would sign and you would sign, it might be that like it's a PDF of let's say you're giving me my contract as an administrator and it has your signature just already in it as a PDF and my information is fed into it. I would just sign and acknowledge it electronically.
mm-hmm,
So it's kind of like maybe a hybrid or a halfway point of that. So.
okay.
And I can look into it more to see what options they have if you'd like me to.
Yeah, I'm just I mean, so I'm not comfortable with, they had asked me for my signature and I'm not comfortable with it just being used. And so
Mhm.
like tomorrow I'm coming in to sign all the contracts, which is what, 400 something.
Sure,
So
sure,
what I'm just trying to think in the future,
sure.
it would be a lot easier, because I know one of the things Joyce was concerned about was efficiency. And, you know, if I'm able to go into the system and sign everything, or everything can be sent out of Skyward to DocuSign, whatever it may be,
Mhm.
when that comes up, it can be more efficient because then I can just do it and I don't have to come to the district office every single time it's necessary.
Sure.
And in real time.
And then I'm also thinking too that, you know, Joyce was talking about the deadlines that we have to get contracts to teachers. And again, I think it would be more efficient to email it, get the signature and have them back instead of it's going to the principal, I'm assuming in paper form after it's all signed, and then they're handing them out.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm just thinking,
In an electronic world, where can we get it? You know,
absolutely.
we definitely can, I know for sure for a fact, because we were working towards it when I was in Valdez, that you can send contracts out and they can be signed. You know, whether you're able to, you sign it and then it goes out to them, I'm not quite sure about that piece.
Okay.
Even for and I've gotta get it ready for tomorrow night, like all of the bank signature cards. So like for you, Kathy and Colin, we have to load a signature block that's gonna have your signature on for all of our checks that go out for the district. I mean, that's just standard operating procedure. So, you know, we crank out checks, like 100 of them every Friday morning or Thursday morning. So that's kind of like,
Does that go after? So you're doing that every Friday and putting our signature on that without us ever seeing this document?
well, they go through the purchasing and requisition process before they are signed and approved. So, like, and I do that, I manage that, you know, just the requisition system. So they're entered in by requisitioners and then approved every week. Or I mean, daily I approve those, and then we make the purchases and then they're signed, and then what's paid, you guys are given and provided through the payment of vouchers.
Right, but that's already after that's been sent out.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So,
Did I just over here, so whose signature, like I didn't give an authorization for my signature.
I think we did when we signed a sheet of paper just the other day, right?
That's
that was to set up the bank stuff,
Yeah.
and so we have to set up, so for Alio, we had our financial system, and for Skyward, we'll have to do something similar. We have to have, just the signature block updated for the checks. Actually, when we get to January, we're gonna really start moving to paying as much as we can by ACH. And even the payroll stuff is all, you know, all like that, you know, it just, the payroll, we don't send out hard copy checks, that's just, you
Like
know,
they get it to
an
their
advice.
email or something.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I would look in here, you know, what comes through, like when I look at my personal pay stub, but, you know, that's something that,
I just perked up because I mean,
Yeah, no.
I haven't given any authorization to use my signature at all. So I mean,
well, and we haven't given you the things to sign,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
And that's,
all right. So I heard that and I took a little bit of a
No.
pause there that. you know,
but we
she'd
do
be
need
happy.
to update that every year when there's a new board president, vice president, treasurer, we have to update those documents to reflect, so.
Oh.
And then there's other documents that go through here, so I'm just looking here like at what my last check would have been. If I print a copy of my pay advice, you know, like I get like a regular form that has the detail of my check, it doesn't have signatures on it, but that's no different than paying, like we're giving out actual checks yet.
Right.
but we will be going through and going to an ACH system. So
Okay.
yeah, that is the system that we have in place, so.
So
Some
what would
districts-
happen, I guess, in that ACH system, if the amount has already been paid, what were to happen if the board declines the payment and says we don't authorize that payment, then what happens?
We would have to go, it's kind of hard at that point when you get to a system where the service is already rendered, you know what I mean? So that's where my role as the Director of Business Services, I have to approve the purchases as they come through based on our purchasing policy, which I know that you guys wanted to review. So, the sheer volume of what we go through daily and stuff, like ordering stuff,
Yeah.
Some boards have they'll call it like a board auditor where someone goes through Skyward and like acknowledges them before they're paid. That's something, but you have to be on a quick turnaround just to
Right.
take a look and eye them up. That's certainly a possibility. I saw that, witnessed and worked through that in a small district, and even that was challenging. So I'm
I
not saying
imagine
that.
Yeah, that seems like it'd be a kind of, I don't know about you guys, I think that'd be kind of a tedious endeavor, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's where, my role and you entrusted me, and I take
Yeah.
that very, very, very seriously. To make sure to manage the purchasing requirements. And I know that there was concerns over some things historically, and.
Right, that's kind of where I was getting at there.
Yeah, well, and
But I
I think
think
you gotta think about if we need to purchase computers, if we say that we need to purchase computers, you'd say, well, get them. If we're, which is different from if we're, like when we decided to go with Skyward, that's something we brought to the board to say like, this is gonna be $200,000, do we have your approval? So I think that's where the delicate balance comes in. When I was talking with Colin on the phone, we were talking just about the fact of the volume that a large district like ours has, with a, almost $90 million budget, it's, definitely without question, you guys have every right to know with every purchases, but the entrusting is big because of the volume and the timing on it to keep our business moving. So, and we want
Yeah,
to
I
stay in
think-
good standing with
Right,
vendors.
and I
Right.
think you brought up a good point, Angela, or what you said was, I think it comes down to the policy, right?
Yes.
So
it does.
if we know the policies and we look at them and we're agreeing to the policy, then you can carry that
Then
out,
it's
right?
correct. Yes.
So
Mhm.
so I think maybe that's where a little of our work needs to be, is
Definitely.
knowing what that is and
Mhm.
making sure that.
Agreed.
Yes. So
And that
like,
actually would be a great segue into the next
yeah,
item here.
exactly.
Item
Just
4.
moving right into it.
to
There you
the,
go. Just
to the
beautiful.
policy review.
Yeah, I can actually have it all good. Stacy, let me bring you a packet of this. And Kathy, please feel free to say if you have any questions. I don't want to, here's purchasing in here. I just made a little collection of some of these, so. So yeah, Colin had just requested that
There's a
Oh, I'm sorry
two-part,
about
there,
that.
there's a two-part to this policy review. Angela, I'll let you
sure.
touch on your request for it first, and then I'll jump in on what I wanted here.
Sure. So with the purchasing policies, one of the things that has come up in our district is that our threshold, the lower threshold for seeking price quotations is $3,000. In the packet that I put together for all of you, Kathy, were you able to see it in the?
Yep, I have it.
Okay, good. So what I did is I put together, and I know the staple kind of is overtaking it a little bit, but Sheboygan Area School District, our policy, Appleton Area School District, Green Bay, and Valiers. I picked a small district, just the one, just where I was at just before, just as an example. And a lot of them look the same. They don't have like the district on it. Green Bay has their emblem on the top of theirs. Most of them use Neola. And so you'll see some very, what Neola does is a strong point is it always is offers the legal wording, if you will, for policies, and are reviewed by attorneys. So you'll see a lot of the same language used. Our threshold is $3,000, and as you notice in a lot of the other districts, Sheboygan is another one. A lot of them have $10,000 as a threshold. So one great example is like buildings and grounds. So a lot of times with buildings and grounds, they'll have to repair something, and it's might be something that's going to cost $15,000. Well, or if it's something that we have to do similar work, but we have to do it across all buildings in the district. So, so that's why we just propose that we consider raising that single item threshold down to, or up to, $10,000. And then,
So the second page here, it looks like so you have 6320, one with the update, one without. Is that kind of like, so the first page is the current existing, and then you turn to the,
No, it's a different school district.
different school districts. Yeah,
Oh,
they're different
okay.
options.
Just
that's
doing a
an example
comparison.
one. Okay,
Yeah,
And then the next is a different school district.
so these are all just different school districts? Okay.
correct. So, and I think usually like we are required to go to bid, I'm missing it right here on now. Okay, so it's under competitive bids, it says when the purchase of and contract for single items of supplies, materials. So single items is a key word, is reasonably anticipated to reach the amount of $100,000 or more. The business office shall obtain competitive bids. So that's where I think you had some questions in there, Colin. And again, we just operate based on our policies. So
Right.
one of the districts had $75,000 in there. It's again refers always to your volume. So, I mean, I'm just giving you a lot of information. You didn't have any time to review it, so and you could look for other purchasing policies. I was hoping that we could, discuss your thoughts on it, and then maybe come back at the next meeting and talk about where we want to kind of go with some of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, my thoughts are just looking at that number. I think, if I'm understanding it right, so that 3,000 applies to just supplies, materials, equipment, right? And the 100,000 is for contracts.
For larger endeavors, like new things that we approach, so like if we're going to go to, let's say, let's say we're gonna do a big major renovation, or like our ALC project, that's $2.5 million. So that was over $100,000. Or Nexus Solutions, working with the district to help with bidding on the Deptron unit, So
The thing for the pool.
Yeah, and so then they work, and even our E-rate program, like they work to collect the bids for us. Some of those programs do that, in order to get like a range of quotes and prices on those services.
Right, so I guess my thinking is like, I would almost think it might not be a bad idea to reduce that threshold. I mean, unless you can convince me otherwise, that would just not be a good idea, but, and here's my thinking
Sure.
behind that, this whole, I don't know how involved or knowledgeable you were with that whole Darude contract that got executed, but I know that was like $42,000.
That came in before my time in the district, but I am aware of the concerns with that.
And at the time, I was reaching out to another board member who's no longer with the board, but they had told me that was, I think, discussed at the committee level and it never even got to the board, right? So I just want to make sure that we implement safeguards to prevent, contracts like that from being approved without it getting to the full board. So I don't know if we do that with dollar amounts or.
You're talking about decreasing the 100,000 or the 3,000? Which one?
Well, I think it would fall under the 100,000 because it's
Right,
more of a
okay.
contract, like a service.
Yeah.
And, but at the same time, I don't want to encumber or create additional encumbrances, if we can avoid that. So it's really just kind of talking through what's the best way to do that to where.
Yeah, and it's tricky. It's a tricky balance, because if we're gonna purchase, let's say we are gonna get, let's say there's a new technology, like a new smart board or something like that, and we're gonna do it for a bunch of rooms or something, it's the balance between, if it's something that's doesn't, like been, identified as something that we need and will keep school going and, then from that perspective, it's you as a board member, you might say, well, I didn't need to approve that. But then there are some things that you're like, oh, I really do want to have a voice in this. So they're both, it's the balance of keeping business going, you know what I mean?
Right.
And having some kind of ability to have insight on those things. So even for myself as a business manager, we entrust, like if something goes to the curriculum committee, I entrust that they've done their work and they've followed the process, the policy, so that when it comes my way in the system to approve it, that it's already gone through those steps. So, so I guess I know what you guys are saying. I would be concerned over just because of the volume of business that we do, and it may be one option to consider. Is to think about if it's like new initiatives, like I think there are, with textbooks and stuff, they have like a process, for example. And so that's just something to consider, just because the volume of what we purchase on a regular basis is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between the 3,000 and the 100,000?
So the 3,000 and the 100,000, the $3,000 is just getting quotes. So like if I'd say for the background checks, for example, like there's 3 companies, I'm going to get their prices on it, and then we still have to evaluate those. It doesn't mean that we would necessarily always take the cheapest one, but we get 3 different quotes to kind of get a ballpark range of what, what's out there.
Okay, so Joyce just went ahead with BIB, but we didn't get any other quotes. Is that because it's not over 3,000?
It was real close to that, I think, some of them. And so she did get like names and looked into things, and then and she was going to get quotes for the other ones. But that because that's where it was, her and I had talked about that. And then she did decide that B&B was the one that, when she was talking to her colleagues, that was the preferred vendor. And she liked their services that they would provide. But then, like, if you would, like we were purchasing a van, you get into some of these situations with our ESSER money, because one of the identified needs was students getting to school. Well, in fall, I called Maritime. I called like everyone that sold vehicles. I couldn't find a vehicle anywhere. Van Horn could get us vehicles. So that was a system where I worked and could show documentation that I worked to get quotes, but sometimes you can't get quotes, The $100,000 difference, just to make sure I answer your question, is that's more like of a standard, where you go out to bid, where you say, I want you to bid on these certain specifications. So you still kind of do the same process in a quote, but it's much more informal, where the bid process is more where you'll see it says bid shall be sealed and then opened by the district in the presence of at least one witness, a bidder it's much more of a formal process.
Okay,
So
I missed that, but the quote
Yeah, no,
versus
no,
the
no.
bid. Okay.
so that's, it's ultimately, is the board, you guys get to set, that's your role to set policy, and it's my role.
We could talk about that here, right?
Huh?
We could talk about that here, right? Because it's on the agenda.
It's a committee.
Yes, about just the purchasing policy, you mean.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking out loud, right? And I think one of the things that we want to avoid is just another, thing like the route, how that somehow got
Agreed.
through and approved. So maybe we could limit the scope of, because I don't want to create additional encumbrances for you to review stuff like toner, right? If you got to buy a bunch of that, we don't want to bog down and slow that down. But if it's something that's
Like a new initiative, are you saying?
yeah, or even just looking back specifically at DeRoot, just anything related to like staff training, right? I think
Right,
that
I
should
can
be
even,
reviewed.
I can think of,
The
professional
behavioral one.
development, the
Yeah.
170,000 almost that we've spent in the last 2 months.
And it just seems,
That,
it's questionable.
I think, maybe, and again, just thinking out loud, maybe we look at the policy and just adjust it to say any staff training or whatever, needs to be board approved prior to spending or something like that.
These are all of these Neola policies currently?
Some of them are, it seems like Appleton does not use Neola. But you'll notice, I really think if you would, use a little bit of time to look at the different policies, there's still, what's really nice about Neola is that districts still can personalize their policies a great deal. So, even, just based on reviewing these, you'll see a lot of different intricacies between the different districts. So I'm happy to pull more. This is just kind of what I did kind of at a quick poll. I wanted to just give you some examples.
If you wouldn't mind, I wouldn't mind seeing what other policy policies are out there.
You mean a company?
Yes,
Besides
yeah,
Neola.
because that is one thing I would like to review is, especially with the, I've brought it up numerous times that I want to revisit that 5310 because I was very dissatisfied with that policy. And it was kind of jammed down our throats that that's just what we're going to do because that's what Neola had. So I guess my viewpoint on Neola is that I'd like to see, okay, well, let's see what else is out there as far as other than Neola. But staying on topic, I do agree with you, Tony, that that 100,000, to me, I would like to see that brought down. I really would. And if Kathy, if you want to weigh in on this too, I don't want to just leave you out there because you are on the committee. But I personally think that that 100,000 is way too high, and I would like to see that brought down a little bit. We can't. It's not an actionable item, but we can refer it to the general meeting board, or we can bring it up in general meeting under our minutes. When we talk about the minutes, we can discuss it from there. But if you guys wanted to weigh in on, is there a number that you guys would be? I know you had said that you were interested in it. Do you have a number that you would like to see anybody brought down to?
I kind of, what Tony's saying about, or Angela's talking about our initiative, that it's written in such a way that it's not so necessarily always the dollar amount, but what it's going to be used for.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, professional development, we've used a lot of that money. I mean, when we're talking about between DeRoot and then that was all professional development. And I would be, again, I wasn't here for DeRoot either, but I was here for the behavioral stuff. And I don't remember there being, maybe there were 3 quotes that were looked at.
The challenging piece with some of that is, like the verbal intervention training is very specific. It's like sometimes you can't find 3 different companies that will do what you want to do. Does that make sense? So sometimes it's like, I can't think of a good, it's like trying to find 3 quotes sometimes, but there's not really a comparable. So like when they do an assessment of a house, they're going to look for comparables. Right. Sometimes there aren't strong comparables. So it's, it's like you always, I think in that case, so there's a lot of gray just within because of the varying things that we buy. And, like Skyward, Skyward may have certain things that Skyward works with. So we may be able to get 3 quotes with different things, but 2 of them may not even interface with our system. That's kind of like with our ALC project. We had to continue with ALC because that was already in our buildings. And if you get different systems, then you have.
What's ALC?
That's the automated logic, our heat control systems.
Right.
So I guess I'm not trying to skirt around the.
No, I'm thinking though, maybe, again, I think another frustrating thing has been just so we know we're going to have 8 professional development days or whatever it is.
Sure.
So, and again, I think this is going to go as far as the board goes, as far as strategic planning, right? What is our initiative for what is the scope of our professional development for the year with our teachers, right? That the board or our administrators come and say, these are the needs that I think we have, and that's planned right throughout the year, that we know that going in. I don't know that was, again, I don't know, but I don't know that was planned rather than reactionary to what happened in the district. So, I mean, again, I think that would have helped, right? Because the first time that it ever came up was seeing it on the check.
Sure.
And so,
Correct.
you know, and I just, you know, happened to notice it. So again, that would have been, though, if you have such a high threshold,
Yes.
you wouldn't know that. But again, I mean, and Kathy has something, but I guess that's where I'm coming from, is maybe it's the verbiage rather than the amount.
And you know, too, if looking at the words, if I can just add this, then Kathy, I'm sorry. You know, if you think when the purchase of and contract for single items of supplies, you know, that's like a main system, you know what I mean? So like Skyward is one single item, you know,
Right.
Whereas the verbal intervention did add up to be over 170,000, but when you have a volume of 600, 700 employees you're training, that's where the volume gets to be so much more. So
Right.
it's not easy.
Right.
So I agree. So Kathy, okay.
Yeah.
Kathy?
Yeah, I think for me, it's more a matter of the dollar amount doesn't bother me as much as maybe the idea is to put stipulations on what it can be spent on. Because I think this is more about things that may be controversial that aren't in the direction that the board or we believe the school district should go. You know, if it's like technology and things like that, I don't think anyone would disagree with spending money and getting bids. But there are those items
Kathy?
are okay with some people, not with others. And those are the areas that I think if we could identify more.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, what would you like me to do for next steps? Would you like me to look for some more policies from different, you know, companies? Or, I mean, Neola is pretty, I mean, I'm not, you know, I know Neola just happens to be very prominent. So like
Right.
most of the districts in the state will use that. I was very surprised to see that Appleton didn't use Neola just because it's so prominent. No matter where
Green
that's.
Bay.
So I'm gonna still, I mean, I guess I'm just one person. But before I let Tony here weigh in, I still am not sold on this large increment of $100,000, and the reason for that is because, you know, it's even if we were to have the language of if it's new, a new expenditure, a new this, new that, what is to say that it, you know, we are on the board and we're off the board. You know, we come and go. You were just saying before the meeting how, you know, really Kathy's probably, you know, the most senior member of the board now. And she hasn't even been on the board that long. So the knowledge that we have moving forward isn't necessarily there. So we aren't going to know what these expenditures are
In a history.
and it very well, with the changing of the board, it literally could be that, you know, it might have been, yeah, let's go ahead with doing stuff like this, to no, let's not doing stuff like this. And there has to be some sort of checks and balances accommodated, I believe, with that. And I believe that is where the vote of thumbs up and thumbs down does play in the part. I understand the not wanting to, you know, railroad the operations and slow things down and et cetera. But I mean, there's a big difference between $3,000 and $100,000 for things, and I don't see that $100,000 needs to be the dollar amount. I would honestly be very much in favor of cutting that right in half. But that's just me. Tony, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, you know, that sounds reasonable on the surface, but I'd love to get more information on, I guess, what's customary for other districts our size. 'Cause I
Yeah.
don't want to encumber staff with creating more work, but I hear what you're saying, and that might be the right answer. But, kind of riding off what Kathy was mentioning, I think a lot of it's, for me personally, and I think most of our community, yeah, we definitely want to be fiscally responsible, and I'm gonna trust that we have, competent people that are doing their jobs there, and that we're getting that done, and we'll find ways to save more where we can, right?
Mhm.
But I think another big issue is just, philosophically, like, where are we going as a district? And I see the biggest issue there with some of these training programs. This is how, CRT can creep into our district, right? Unknowingly, right? And we saw it happen with the root. And these are things that I want to, speak loudly against. And we have to, because there's a large contingent of our community that feels the same way. We just want to make sure that the focus is on, education and how do we improve that and make our community better and stronger, but not necessarily move into an identity-based agenda that's really divisive in the long term. So
Sure.
that's what I want to make sure that we're always mindful of when we're reviewing these things. And I think we can definitely have a discussion on those limits. I thought the same thing at first, but then the more I thought about it, I didn't want to make your job harder than it is, right? Knowing resources are limited. But the big thing is just being mindful of that, what we just talked about.
Yeah. And you could always think too about, just I'll look and see what other, do more policy research. That's not a problem. I can look in other states too that might offer, just a wider range of options.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that you need to do that. I mean, it's up to you guys. I'm not on the committee, but, a lot of these, ours is the highest, 75,000 here for one, Valder's 20,000. Another one is, again, I don't know, 25,000, that's request and record keeping, so there's probably more, but I don't know that Angela spending her time getting more
Would be
would
beneficial.
be beneficial. I guess what I think is, the other thing too, for me, is order of operations. For instance, and I can't remember, but had I known we were gonna spend money on copy machines and something, I probably wouldn't have supported that, because I think we should get rid of paper.
Yeah.
So, and again, that means a totally different philosophy, right, moving forward, and a huge change. So I wouldn't have wanted to spend money on something that was older technology, I guess.
Yeah.
I would want to buy tablets, right, and get rid of paper altogether or whatever. So I get, but I don't remember that ever coming up. I don't remember that coming up as, maybe it came to finance.
I think I shared that, I'm trying to think of, just because it's about a year ago that we were looking at different contracts, just because we were, our previous contract had expired and we knew the fleet of the equipment. So very much to your goal, we knew we needed to reduce, and still we're gonna have to do a tremendous amount of professional development around how to make a PDF and send it to print.
Right,
And not getting, even though we went through a pandemic, the volume of teachers that just have students print off their work to grade it, which is still very helpful. Like an English teacher to write comments on there. There's sometimes where electronic grading works, sometimes it doesn't. So, yeah.
Well, and you still want a first grader to be able to, learn how to cut on lines and stuff like that. And so there are certain things where paper is going to be a necessity, but not to the level. There's no reason that a teacher.
Even the edit function on papers. I taught online, and if you submit your thing to Google Docs and then you hit the edit function, you can do all that. You can circle, you can put a little note in but it's different. It's definitely from a teacher perspective.
Correct. And that's a big shift. It's a huge shift. I know even when I was in the classroom to manage an electronic pile of work versus the stack of papers. For some reason, the stack of papers seemed easier to manage. So
Absolutely, yep.
I definitely get it, and it's, I mean, this even reducing the number of machines as much as we are is like a huge shift, and many teachers are very, very concerned.
Sure.
So like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like finding that happy medium.
Right.
I guess, you know, I'm also just curious too, if we could consider moving up the threshold of the bottom threshold for the price quotations to 10,000. That's pretty consistent in the other policies.
Mm.
You know, I'm just wondering if you guys would be okay with that.
Okay, my suggestion would be, is that you guys look for the language that you want in these, if it's the 10,000, and that, you know, has a committee come up with what that's gonna look like and present that to the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only concern there is, you know, I don't have a whole lot of visibility on the dollar sizes of a lot of your purchases. And I know sometimes, you know, and I'm not suggesting this is happening. I'm just saying sometimes if vendors know that purchasing policies, you know, are getting a little bit more lax, you know, where they don't have to get bids, they get a little bit comfortable, right? So I want to make sure that we get everyone's best price.
Oh, yeah,
And
government
keep them
jobs.
under the, you know, under the assumption that if you don't give me your best price, we're gonna go somewhere else, right? You know, and just
Sure.
that there's competition out there that, and, you know, I deal with customers in my space that are better than that than others. And, you know, there's some that you just know, like, you know, you could really, you have to come with your best number all the time. Otherwise they're gonna go somewhere else. So I just want to be cognizant of that. And I'm not saying no, I'm just saying that I'd like to just really think through the upside and the downside of that. And then just make sure that we have a good, strong internal policy to challenge our vendors. Do we have multiple vendors? I hope for each category, like, and how are we gonna, you know, what percent of our, you know, spend that we go out is gonna fall below 10 grand? Is that like half of our spend, or, you know?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
You know, if I'd have to find like the percentage of that, you know, I just think about like my main thing is like the volume that we purchase as a district. You know, if it's a
Right.
district level purchase, a lot more of those purchases are over that $3,000 threshold very easily. And then sometimes, you know, whether there is a competitor, you know, reasonable competitor to get quotes and stuff is another factor, you know.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I also with Neola, if you don't mind me mentioning this too, like what we're able to do as a part of that service is they can give you a draft of all of the options that you can have in there, and then we can see what the language options are. I think that's, you know, we pay for the service. That's one of the reasons, one of the ways we should explore it, you know, and use that to our advantage, because we have the subscription.
Well, yeah, and that's all that is just shooting out an email. Hey, give us some different options for this policy. One thing though that I did start thinking about is for policies, anytime a policy has to change, it has to be voted on twice.
Correct.
So there's significant time and ability for when this policy does get revisited, for options to be laid out, opinions to be had, and even details to be hashed. So that being said, I think I would recommend that we move, I would recommend that we would look at bringing policy 6320 to the general board to be reviewed and voted on at some point here. Yeah, Kathy, do you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
I guess, you know, some of the things that just come to my mind are, one, this is obviously a financial decision, but two, it really is about subject matter. And third, with it, knowingly that an incoming interim superintendent may be here for the next year or two, perhaps kind of containing some of the spending limits may help, because I don't know, I just have concerns that we bring in someone as an interim, we have to make sure they have the same vision that the board does, because they'll have the ability to spend money, you know what I mean, and then leave. So I think that would be something to consider.
I agree 100% there.
I like the idea of bringing it to the board too. I think we should
Okay, so then we'll have, at the,
My fear of bringing it to the board is it can be a runaway train, right? How long are we gonna talk about this and the different, I can see it being part of strategic planning on what we wanna do.
mhm.
But my fear is, I mean, if we're gonna go, I mean, look how long we've spent talking about it now. If there's not something coming out of committee of what your suggestion would be, I think it has a tendency to be a runaway train on the
So-
floor.
I'll make my recommendation. If this committee would support my recommendation, I'll ask you guys if the committee would support, and then we just bring it on to committee. We can't do any action because it's not an action item on the agenda. But I would like to see at least, so the request has been put out to bring the contract from 3,000 to 10,000. I'd say meet in the middle, 7,000 for there. And then I would say for that 100,000, I would like to see it at least brought in half. So, especially given, I agree with you 100% on that one, Kathy. We're gonna have new people participating in the oversight. It's very important that they maintain the vision. So I think that would be being good stewards. Are you guys okay with those numbers, or would you like to see them more or less? What did you?
I think I am. I'd be curious to know, Angela, like, why shouldn't we do that, right? Because it sounds reasonable to me. I mean, is that gonna really encumber you guys that much in your work day to day if we reduce those limits a little bit, or?
I mean, I think one way, you're also asking for more communication just on
Yeah.
what's coming through and so I think it's not even about the dollar amount at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
It's just about the communication.
Absolutely.
About just what's coming through. And it's, if you wanna come just halfway on the 3,000 to 10,000, that's fine. I mean, it's whatever you guys, you guys, that's your role,
Right.
so.
Kathy, where do you sit on that? Or how are you feeling? I heard you.
Well, first of all, Angela just nailed it on the head, because I kept saying over and over again, this really is about communication, and we need to increase that about what's happening in the district with the board, so that we're just aware of what's going on. I can see raising that bottom dollar amount because we do have a lot of increased expenses now, like just cost of living has gone way, way up. So if that helps Angela and our group carry on business, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, so
Yeah, I would just add on to that, what we were talking about earlier, if we're gonna bring something to the rest of the board, that we would, any sort of training or staff training, before it got spent would have to get reviewed.
as a caveat,
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
yeah, just
Yeah.
before
I
money
think
got
that's a
spent on
fair,
it,
reasonable
the
request.
board would have to at least be able to review all the materials, and approve it
Sure.
prior to
I would think that should be a function of curriculum and cross over into budget and finance. That's what I would see, but I think Stacy's nodding.
Yes, I agree.
Well, and I think before we would think one of the steps I know that there's energy around, moving forward. But I wonder if we get the language from Neola just to see if there are other wording options that
Sure.
you guys would want to consider. And then could we add the discussion and possible action?
We can, yeah, I would,
Next meeting?
bring it to the discussion. Like I said, it's gonna have to go before
Mhm.
the general board twice, because it's a policy, review and
Right.
change.
Mhm.
So, by all means, I'm all about more information.
Okay.
So if you wanna bring that information,
Yeah.
cool.
And I think the other thing, Angela, to remember is, we're all local,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
And if you need an emergency meeting, right,
Mhm.
a special meeting for something because we've bogged down, whatever, just ask us and we're happy to do it,
Yeah.
Okay.
right?
Oh,
I mean,
good to know.
Yeah, I'm on
Yeah.
board.
we're,
Yeah, same.
yeah, I mean, we can do that because we want the checks and balances. And so if
Mhm.
we're doing something that's gonna make that challenging for whatever reason, just let's have a special meeting if something like that were to happen.
I think definitely if it's for, on the range of like new purchases, you know what I mean? Like if it's already something that's been approved, that's been, that has come through the proper channels. I think that's where the difference is gonna be. Like
Sure.
if we have to go through like approving everything that's gonna be over a 50,000, then we're gonna have a lot of backlog and installing and learning at times. So, yeah, I mean, that's reasonable. So yeah, I'll work on getting the language and then.
Can I just add one quick thing? I agree with what Kathy was saying, like this probably should be in the curriculum discussion, or for the staff training part of it, but just thinking out loud, knowing that there's gonna be turnover in the board, I think it would be wise to implement safeguards just in case, something happened down the road, because I think that it would be at least worth considering.
I think one thing that might be helpful is in this purchasing is that you define supplies or define materials, define equipment, or service, right? I mean, where does the program development or professional development, where does it fall under one of those?
It falls under a service, so a professional, let me see here, a single item, supplies, materials, or equipment is so that's,
right, I mean,
so services aren't necessarily drawn out, but you could draw that out.
Right, you can say services,
to the district,
i.e., this, and this. So then, again, it's clearer to anyone that follows us, right, why that was put in there. And it's clear to our administration, our staff, everybody that, that's how that is run. I mean, again, I think it's just going to be a different kind of order of operations. It's not that.
We can make it happen. Yeah. All right. So moving on, if nobody else has anything to add to the policy review that we just spoke about, the MPSD foundation update. We did have some discussion on that already. Is there more to that?
Yeah, and it just gonna draw, we don't need to do, especially it's just because we need to move on. There was one other policy that I brought, like if you guys want to take a glance over that, we can spend time on it, another
Fund
fund
balance.
balance. And
Okay.
I just thought this was interesting, I was gonna share it just for a bit of education for the committee, just about the different types of fund balance. We always, our cash balance is always changing. Our fund balance is always made official. We close where a lot of businesses will close business every month, we close once a year. And so it's my duty to report our fund balance, and it's what that is a percentage of our cash versus our budget. So we run into just low points during the year, especially before aid comes in January and June to make final payrolls and stuff. And one thing I just found interesting since I started in the district is we do not have any language, and I'm not sure whether the committee would like to address this now or in the future, but have more percentages. So when the percentage of fund balance falls between this point and this point, the board must know. The board always has to be made aware if we're going to go into a budget deficit, if we have to go into fund balance. So I thought that you may find that interesting. And it's, one thing that is always, when you see we have a $90 million budget, rounded up, it's really just based off of Fund 10, which is lower, because we have special ed and we have special education, we have food service, we have other funds that are separate and have grant monies tied to them. So, you really want to have a healthy fund balance in order to sustain your operations so that we know that we can avoid short-term borrowing. And we've been lucky as a district that we've been able to do that. So, because that can be quite costly if we have to borrow.
So you're talking about Green Bay here, they say
Number E.
15% of anticipated. Yeah, I mean, that's smart. That's smart to do that.
From a fiscal management perspective, where if there's something where, just to keep us, you could say as a board, okay, we're just gonna go into fund balance and we're gonna go into fund balance for 5 years. Well, all of a sudden the fund balance comes to, we'd never come to zero because we wouldn't be able to pay for any of our obligations. But, it just is something to think about. We have certain fund balance for our self-insured, our health insurance plan, and so we have to protect our employees so we can meet those obligations. So, certainly, I don't want to, this isn't like an urgent discussion, but I thought that you would find it interesting to explore at some point.
Well, maybe we can include that into the policy review to do 6235. We're as we try to update and review our policies, we can include 6235 to the 6320 as obviously needing to be revisited.
And when that comes to the board, will you guys have the document that you want?
Well,
We would, so that's like where I would go to for both policies at
Yes.
this point. I'll go and I'll talk and, since Joyce's office kind of manages Neola, I'll say, can you show me what the options are for this policy and this policy? And then they'll show you, sometimes there's options, or if there's an update, they'll say like, strike this, and
Sure.
then, and add this instead, so.
Okay, got it. So you'll bring that to the full board.
Well, and I would bring that to a next committee meeting is what I would do, because we would want that to be approved in the committee and to bring forward to the board. So you would want
Right,
to,
that's what I'm thinking.
as a committee, you would really, to work the most efficiently, would want to, have a policy in place that you would say, this is where, as the finance and budget committee are set to offer this forward.
Is that something that we have to do in an actual meeting, or could you just send it to us and via email and just say, here's what we talked about? And if we say it looks good, we could just keep it moving?
I think what, if you guys are okay with it, I could look at the Neola options and I could show you, I would definitely be able to show you what the options are. So we don't want to be transparent, so you can see what all
Right.
the options are and just see if there's other things you'd want to consider too. But then we would want to just the opportunity to formally vote in person in a scheduled meeting, and then and just to have any changes to that. So like I would draft up what I would say, I suggest this, and then, you could say, hey, this is look good. Colin might say I like option A instead of option B. Stacy might say, I really like D, but go ahead.
Right.
so I guess, given the fact that we're gonna have to have, we have to have the 2 read-throughs on these things. We have to make a decision on them. We're probably gonna have to have another, meeting relatively soon, especially if we got 6320 and an interim possibly coming into the pipeline in a relatively short timeline here. So I mean, at least, 6235, that should probably just be brought forward to committee. 6320, I would like to see that bump to the general, to be debated on.
Could you have a meeting next week, do the final whatever you want, and then bring a committee
next-
meeting?
yeah.
And then the next meeting would be the first.
Yeah, and then what we'll do is just let everybody know that we're looking to review, possibly change these policies so they can weigh out on them as well. Can you also, that documentation, can you then forward that to the entire board as well, please? Not just finance, for review.
Talk about the Neola, the
All the
suggestions.
policies, yeah. But yeah, all right, so then we'll, Angela will, work on setting up a meeting coming up here.
Yeah, I'm out of town a little bit next week, but we can see if we can make it work. And
Nope.
then-
No out of town, man.
Ah.
Yeah, you're not allowed to have life outside of
But
here.
well, yeah, definitely.
Depends, where are you going? Do you
Yeah, I
have
know,
access to
I
Zoom?
know. I know. I mean,
Oh.
well, that's true too. I mean, we have the last goal of the spring conference. So we'll,
Cool.
definitely see what the options are. There is a need to, that I don't know if Joyce had shared with personnel yet, just to look at we do want to have a joint meeting for health insurance to talk about some of the options for our 2023 renewal that we're looking at. So,
we were looking at like 18th on that one, wasn't it?
yes, and I think I know you guys had met with personnel on Friday. I know things were just kind of hectic. So Joyce and I
Yeah, I
haven't
don't know
had
that
a
we talked
chance
about
to
that.
connect.
Okay.
But let's see if we can make the 18th work. We can
Sure.
work that in as
Yeah.
well. That's not a
Okay.
problem. Happy to help with that.
Okay.
And then just to make sure I'm hearing it right on the fund balance, you're interested in looking at that, but just not on a fast track. We just
Yeah, the other one is, he kind of has a little bit more timeline to it,
yes.
so
So
it's for especially the possibility of interim. But yes, you could certainly bring it in just the same. We're gonna be revisiting a lot of different policies, I think. So they
Okay.
just, MPSD foundation update, did you have anything more to that?
Actually, just one little bit, because I shared a little bit of the historic relationship with the foundation and the board. I mean, it's really a great organization. They have a wonderful board, and it's really nice to be, assist them with some of their I'll help with filing papers, and approving financials for that. But my role is very limited with that. We do with this transfer, the main assets were held at Associated Bank, and that was approved in April of 2020 when they actually shifted the assets in September of 2019. There are some real small, like a Thrivent fund and an Edward Jones fund. They're not very large in value, but I believe they're still under the public school district, under that name. So what I'm going to do is
Oh, and not the
contact,
foundation.
and not that, yeah, they're
Okay.
very small investments. So
Sure.
what my plan is to reach out to them and say, what do we need to do to transfer these assets? And that does need to just be approved through committee to, have those resolutions taken care of, and then we can just move that money, and it's kind of like a whole project in itself.
Sure.
Okay.
So I just wanted to inform you guys that that's kind of one of the projects on my list, and I'm hoping to take care of that soon. If that's, then I'll of course bring it to the board committee.
Prior to move? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Correct.
2021, 2022 budget update?
Yeah, just some quick, mentions here. Budget adjustments, it's a very standard practice in a school district as we wrap up our budget. Budget is always a tentative plan based on what we think is going to happen, and things don't happen as planned. And so what we have to do is, the state asks us for us to file our budget based on the second digit of the function, which is a 6-digit number when you see the payment of vouchers. So a lot of times you'll see the graphs when they compare districts by instructional expenses, support services, and all those kinds of things. So we have to often do, which is some final budget adjustments, and we're required to bring them to the board, have them approved, and then publish them in the paper to share that with with the public and make that officially noticed, because our original budget hearing has to be approved by or just be presented to the public as well. So I'll be bringing those budget adjustments to the group. Our debt service, that was something we had talked about in December, January. I made the board aware of that, where we had it didn't change with fund accounting. We had money that was in our financial system logged under Fund 10, but it really should have been logged under Fund 38. And so in order to expense it and move it, we'll end up having, have a deficit in our budget, maybe not the full amount, depending upon where the budget ends, just because we have to move that money. But it doesn't really change the amount of money we have. It was still in our funds, and it was still specific for paying our debt service. So, Stacy and Colin may remember this, but Tony, we did an advance payment on callable debt. So there's a window of time where you can't make advance payments, and the former business manager had set aside money over time, which you're able to do and is very wise financially, to set the money aside in a separate account until the debt becomes callable. And then you make the advance payment, and then you're able to save on payments in the future. So we're able to eliminate a full year of our debt payment, which is over $1 million, because of the work that was done to set this money aside. But just in order to move the money to make the payment, to log the payment as we have, that's a step we have to follow. We'll have just final aid adjustments, like with open enrollment and vouchers that comes through in June. So, over $2 million that we pay in open enrollment alone, and then in vouchers alone, just for students, here who are either attending in other districts or attending parochial schools. So that's pretty big. Fund 46 is something that I wanted to mention. We do have money set aside in Fund 46, and that is of all the funds, Fund 10 is our general operating fund. Fund 46 is unique, and we've had it over 5 years now. Fund 46 allows the district at the end of a fiscal year to evaluate what's left over, and we had a surplus last year. So we moved money over from Fund 10 into 46, and it allows us to expend the money, okay? And that sounds really odd, but we want to expend as much of our budget as we can because we receive aid based on what we spend. And so since we are positively aided, the more we spend, the more aid we receive based on what we have budgeted. So, that's definitely something that is a big thing that I need to focus on every year. So you're able to move the money into 46, but in order to mobilize and use it, we have to put on file, and one was created when the fund was established, a 10-year capital improvement plan. So we've been talking for the last year about putting together a plan, and we'll bring that to, I don't know if we'll do it through buildings and grounds or finance or both, but we'll share that with the board, kind of like what our study is to date, so that we can just show like what the needs are district-wide. So that helps us, just a kind of a requirement of utilizing that fund. So
What's the balance of Fund 46 currently?
Right now we have about $1.1 million in that. And we do have, through careful planning, we have some technology upgrades that we're, really are on very, very costly upgrades that, equal almost that full amount, that we have planned. That we're going to be required to do in the next 2 years, along with some other buildings and grounds things. So the goal is always at the end of each fiscal year to put as much money, if we have remaining funds left, put money in that fund so that we're able to be aided on it and then use it for other identified projects as we find them.
Yeah, quick question. Thanks for all that, sharing all that info, but for future meetings, would it be possible to have some of this stuff attached on the agenda ahead of time?
Sure.
Just for me personally, I don't know about you guys, and you guys have been here for a while, but
It's a lot of information.
It
kind of
is.
drinking out of a fire hose, so
Yeah,
just
that's
if I
okay.
could read up on something ahead of time, it just makes it easier for me to process while we're here.
yeah.
Be more
And
productive.
school finance is and if you'd wanna meet too, just to learn more about the individual funds and stuff too, I mean, I think, that might be helpful as well,
I
so.
might take you up on that.
Yeah, I'm
Fund
happy to do that.
46 is not in our financials that you give us.
It should be, I can take a look.
Yeah, I'm just looking in board book right now and.
But yeah, just like thinking out loud, like to have all these in advance, just like attached to the agenda. or
Yes.
whatever, would have been, that way I could at least glance it over and,
And I guess I was just bringing it today. No, I'll definitely take that approach in the future. I was thinking that we were just gonna start discussions on it. Today was meant primarily just to be a sharing discussion to get things going. But yes, I can.
and I like that you printed it out too, so that's good, just to have something else to look
Yeah.
at and all that, but, just to help me and the board help you better.
Or
Not
even
a
just a
problem.
direction of conversation, if it's already been established via what's, being sent out, then you can expand upon it, yeah.
And so like, just a real quick aside, and when you look at the balance sheet, Stacy, on the first page, it's
Yes.
under, the funds are listed by like 10, 20, 30, 40,
Yes.
50, so
Yes.
it's under the 40, so.
Oh, I see. So all of them are in there.
Yeah. There are a couple
Anything with a
different
40.
40s, there's a couple of different funds you can have within
Got
there, so,
Okay.
no, not
Thank
a
you.
problem. So, just and I know this is getting long, I can skip ahead, really, the rest of it's gonna go quite quick. The spending trends, Kathy just asked me on how much we had spent for Neola, and I did take a look at it up. Our subscription fee annually for Neola is about $3,000. So, and that's where they, have just all of the policy updating system, and then Mark and Joyce work more with policy. That's not under my work. But that's just something where, you get that, there are attorneys that are working on those policies rather than, if we were to look at that just ourselves, that would be quite extensive, just work and time wise,
Well, and at the end of the day, we're gonna have to have an attorney look over it no matter what. So it's either we pay Neola to look it over or we pay our attorney to look it over. But
correct.
somebody has to have it in there where I think the problem with what happened is that we have to remember that Neola is just a guide, and that we could, like, you look at some of these, we could add other stuff and
Change language, yeah.
Right, but what happened is that the board didn't want to change the language.
Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily Neola.
Yep.
As it was,
Well, there was, yeah, well,
so,
And that's very true. There's a lot of, there's what you always want with your policy is the legal guidance on it,
Right.
to protect us, like to protect our liability. Just if it helped, and I just was gonna mention this for budget, like we budget like $45,000 for legal fees just for our attorneys and stuff. So like the price of Neola being $3,000 is very, very small in comparison to, if you're gonna work with your attorney, this is like, I pulled this today, but I know that we've had more interactions with our attorneys lately, that amount snowballs pretty quick, so.
Right.
So it's just if it helps to
where
know.
are we at budget with the attorneys as far as?
We are right now at a little under half spent, but I know that there are some bills that we're waiting on. I don't know if they charge, like if they're pretty quick to bill us for the prior month. I'm not exactly sure. I review the bills, but I can't remember exactly what's come in already.
so you might want to have that put on an agenda item, especially given the fact that we have that investigation. That might just be.
Well, so one
bugged
of my questions was gonna be, not even just necessarily with that, but, do we, in our budget,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't anticipate that we were gonna have to hire a search firm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Right.
I think another thing.
Election costs, another thing. We had election costs.
Election costs.
Always have
And
some.
another thing I'm thinking is, we've talked about wanting to get a facilitator for a strategic plan. So how, in our current budget, how do we, if we need to do that now, where's that money gonna come from?
Well, for the end of the year, there are always places in the budget where you save, it's in the volume of our budget, we trust every budget manager stays in their budget. They have to show, that they submit budget transfers to cover where there are negatives and stuff. But there are always places that come in a little bit lower. So then that kind of makes up for those gaps.
So I shouldn't worry.
No.
Because
no.
obviously we want to be fiscally responsible, but we know that those are going to be some expenses that we need to do.
Yes, and you want to entrust that you have hired strong professionals to help you with that. So you don't want to, so the board has, the right to, decide how they want to approach it, of course, and we want to always be fiscally responsible, but you always think about the expert guidance that you have for a specific task that, you yourself, might be like, I don't do this ever, you really want to entrust in a professional, and we make it work. So that's where, there are, definitely not major pockets, but, there are ways that we can flex and we can adjust things around, so.
How much of that approximately $90 million a year spend do you think you end up kind of cutting and getting back on that? Do you have a number on that?
It depends a lot from every year. And then with the grants, it's a big thing too. So sometimes with grant spending, if you don't spend all of it and claim it, then it just rolls over, So not all of it is eligible to be either rolled into fund balance or moved into Fund 46. So last year, we ended up having $1.4 million put back into fund balance, which is more than, and we moved $500 into Fund 46. We could have moved more into Fund 46. We were just, with closing out year end, we were just tight on time, and that's what we felt comfortable with at the given point.
Now, was that a reflection of the COVID money, or would that have happened without that?
Some of that was just so weird, like the year before and last year where, people schools weren't taking kids on field trips, and going.
You're right, you did say that, right? So we had all that money that we didn't spend on those sorts of things.
Correct. And ideally, we wouldn't have put that much into fund balance, but then if you think about the amount with the debt service, that's, so we're having to kind of, I don't want to say it covers, but it's for what we put into fund balance, we're using the adjustment to kind of offset that. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so sorry about that. Utilities, we're doing an energy savings program. they come and meet with us synergistic. We have awesome partnership with them, and the gentlemen that come and work with us, they're gonna come and present to, I'll bring an update that we can share either at a board meeting, otherwise they have a little presentation they would like to do in June on the June 14th meeting, and that's really some great news. We have cost avoidance of over $100,000 so far. So there are ways that we hired the energy specialist, and he's doing a great job with that. So
Yeah, I'd love to get more details on what that person's doing, just because I'm kind of in that space, so I could probably give you some eyes on it, at least see what they're up to.
Is that gonna be an ongoing position, or that was?
it's
For a
5
certain
years. It's a
period of
5-year
5 years.
contract. Correct. And over the whole course, we're estimated to save $800,000 to $900,000. So, and even Superintendent Holzman did a wonderful job. We had, working on the price. I think he got him to bring it down, like our fees, like $100,000, like one point. So we really got a nice deal on the management of it, and then to expand it and maximize our savings on that. So it's a really the biggest thing is we're educating our district on how to save and use our resources wisely and optimize the use of our system. So it's good stuff. ESSER update, I can provide more of an update another time, but and I was just going to share that we're claiming. We're working on claiming and following the necessary steps for that. If you don't mind, if I go on to the budget timeline, Colin, are you okay? I don't want to, if you have questions.
I think I'm good. I just got one quick question.
Yep.
It sounded like you said we came in 1.4 million under budget last year. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good, right? I mean, it came in below.
Yeah.
But the expenditures were so thrown off that, I shouldn't say so thrown off, but you really what we would have wanted to do is to put more of that into Fund 46 at the time. Really you want to bring and plan your expenditures to be as close to zero as possible. But I guess that's, to Stacy's question, that's where some things, come up that you can't anticipate. You spent like $17,000 in election costs. Like we didn't expect that we were going to have to do that. You just kind of have to a certain degree, be very conservative in your planning and project carefully.
Oh, that's good. That's the way to do it.
So I work very hard to do that with the whole team. So we do what we can.
So you're wanting to add what did you want to put on the?
Let's say for the ESSER update, the last piece under this current budget
For
that we're
future
just working on
considerations?
claiming.
Sure, we can take an answer update.
Yeah.
How long have you been with the district for again?
This is my about 15, 16 months.
Okay, so first full real
Yep.
year.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just curious what that numbers look like historically. If they're usually able to come in a little bit better than they think or not.
Yeah, I think the last 2 years we've been putting into fund balance, but COVID was the main driver behind that. And so I think that's where a lot of it, and our needs have adjusted through COVID, like where we had to spend money on certain things, but then we weren't printing as much, but then, it all kind of has shifted, I shouldn't say shifted back, but just has kind of recalibrated. So.
Yeah, but so did you want to, is that it for the update then? Or?
Yeah, I was gonna just share the budget timeline for you guys so you could see that. Salary benefits budget, I work with HR on that. Health insurance, we'll bring some more of that to the committee, and then other post-employment benefits, that's another area that is an area that, along with health insurance, there are some ways that we can start positioning the district long-term to repackage some of that. So we have great post-employment benefits, and we really pride ourselves in offering that to our employees, but every district and every organization has to look at, what the liability is on that and see if there are ways to redesign that. So we want to make sure not to change that we offer a great benefit, but see if there's a way to, shift some of that a little bit to, to keep more money in our classrooms, so I'll bring more to that. I know we've gone quite a while.
Yeah. All right. So I would be, any other questions or comments? Otherwise I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
I would I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
just wanted, the timeline for the 2022-23, that's gonna come when, like, at your next finance meeting? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
I gave like a hard copy of it, and like what we're
Oh.
doing right now is we're working on sending, and we're a little behind schedule just overall, sending out the budget packets to budget holders, so, our
Okay.
new accountant is, we're working on getting that out. They'll submit that to the business office by June, we'll work on entering that, I'm really hoping to have a first preliminary budget draft, in July.
Okay.
Or sometimes I'll bring like the revenues to you guys to go over that. And then if we can meet too and go over some general things that'll help. You'll hear the terms a lot more often, and then it makes a little more sense, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, great job. I mean, the fact that we were able to come in this far under budget with everything going on, and, you know, honestly, the way everyone was talking, during the election, I just kind of figured things would be a lot worse with how underfunded we are and all this other stuff, so.
We're definitely a low spending budget, and we're very fiscally conservative. We definitely, I mean, are there needs that we're not able to address, you know, like, definitely. So we have a lot of work ahead of us too, so.
Yeah, so we should talk more about that in the future, maybe when we meet, just so I can
Definitely.
understand that, but I'm just, you know, impressed that we were able to come in under budget like that, so that's
Well, thank you.
good.
Okay. Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
No, I can't make the motion, you gotta.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'm still learning the Robert's rules.
It's all right.
Break here, all right.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
second,
thank you
right.
all, so I'll stop the recording.
Thanks, Angela.
You're welcome, take care.
Hi Kathy, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, guys.
Kathy, see you tomorrow.
See, Kathy?
Are we gonna see you or hear you?
I think you're gonna probably hear me. We'll see what tomorrow brings. How's that?
All right. We'll be praying.
All right. Yeah. Thanks so much. Take care, guys.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
later.